I don't need to tell everybody this. I think you know it. Like whatever it is about Gabe Kapler's quirks, I sort of find them amusing. I don't call them necessarily like there's two different sides to this conversation, I do think, which is the baseball side and then just the Gabe side. One of the reasons Gabe Kapler's not in Philly anymore is because of the Gabe stuff, not just the baseball stuff.
Yeah, it was
the quote-unquote failure of Philly actually gets a little overstated. They weren't terrible. They weren't good. But it's not like he was out there winning 68 games a year. But what doesn't work in a city like Philly...
It's kind of like his Giants' existence minus the
107.
Yeah.
Exactly. And many fans here are frustrated too. But in a different way. I think the fans here are frustrated. It's obvious. The baseball stuff and the analytics, the platooning, the pinch hitting. And that bothers a lot of people, and that's fine. In Philly, for those of you who don't know, it was much more about, okay, this guy's managing our baseball team, and then he's got a website telling me how to eat and what to wear so that I smell good. Philly doesn't do that. I actually think the Bay Area, and I bet, that the Giants sort of ran this through their calculus. Gabe is different, and the Bay Area accepts that much more so than a hard-nosed East Coast city. Gabe Kapler is not the right manager for the Red Sox or the Phillies or probably the Mets or the Yankees. I don't know that he's the best manager the Giants could have. I think there's still, that's a ... I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no yet. But when he wants to put on jeans and bike down the Embarcadero and make burger videos, we're going to handle that a hell of a lot better here than they are somewhere else.
Yeah, I think where there is a parallel, though, is when it comes to the over-explanations, when it comes to, like because he was getting, and the difference between Philadelphia and here, in fairness, is he's getting asked that question that was asked the other day, some version of it, probably every single day.
For sure.
And it is being asked in more of an accusatory tone than it was asked on Wednesday.
And he was a rookie manager who had never won a Manager of the Year award.
In the Bay, a lot of 6-8 games over 500 for a team without a star. That's pretty good. In Philly, it's, well, why aren't you 20 games over 500?
Yeah, I think if I were to just do it in one sentence, a lot of Giants fans, if you're not a Gabe Kapler fan, and even if you're a reporter and you're not a Gabe Kapler fan, you walk out of the room after some of these losses just kind of like with a sheepish grin and shaking your head. In Philly, you go home and scream at somebody. But that's culture. That's the way it is in many homes. Not all. I'm not trying to paint with too broad of a brush, but you get what I'm saying. Those East Coast sports cities they're driven by anger. They're driven by things are not going well. I'm going to call the radio station. I'm going to yell. And someone like Gabe Kapler, when it's not going well, I think he's challenged because he does weird stuff. And so we like to use those things either as the reason or just something that bothers us when it's not going well.
And I will say this for the Giants. I do think that they, and he gets credit for this because he's part of it, they have done a really nice job. Farhan Zaidi in the front office, they've done a really nice job, I think, of protecting him from himself the best way that they can by making sure that he has had enough options that have worked to where there haven't been a lot of these back and forths with things that haven't worked to where he's had like where the computer has more, the computer in his brain has more of a frequency to short circuit, if that makes sense. They've covered like a lot of the things that they've done, the way that they've built rosters, the types of players that they've brought in. That's all like his own preparation, I think, to make sure he has the right answer for everything that they do. When even though it doesn't get asked in the accusatory tone here, I mean, it does maybe a fraction of the time it would be in some of these other markets.
For sure.
But they've done a good job of protecting him, and I think he's done a good job of being prepared, Wednesday aside, to where these instances haven't happened more. Because, yes, I do think in some of these other markets, Philly for sure, it was in part about the other stuff, but it was also, hey, this guy can't give a straight answer about X, Y, and Z after they lose, and he's doing this other stuff.
Like, again, I completely get.
And it happened more in Philly than it's happened here.
Sure, because he's done better here. Because he's now a second-time man. I mean, you remember that. That was
and again, I think
number one thing Farhan pointed out in the press conference. He even had a data answer for a human being that they were hiring. Farhan cited the fact that, well, we've done studies and found that managers who are on their second job are much more effective than on their first job because they've learned from their mistakes, and we think that that's going to happen with Gabe. And I would submit to you that that's been accurate. For the most part.
I think for the most part, well, yes, he's done a better job here than he did in Philly.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
I will say that without a doubt.
Yeah.
I also think, there is a better connection between the front office and Gabe Kapler's job as the manager than there was in Philadelphia. Like it's Gabe Kapler is an extension of Farhan Zaidi. Like it's all one plan. I joked the other day, it's not that Farhan's managing the team, but it's all one plan.
Is that bad?
No,
right? Kyle hired Lynch, essentially.
You
want to be on the same page, don't you?
Yes.
Right?
I'm not even saying that's...
I've been in position in my career where a program director will be like, okay, let's talk co-hosts. And, I'm going to... I want to find somebody who's aligned, right?
Sure,
I think that's fair, isn't it?
Yes, that's not a negative. Like I'm not saying that's a negative thing. I'm saying those are the things that have helped him succeed at a better clip.
Well, we just hear that a lot, right? Like he's a Farhan clone. Okay,
well, I think he is. I also think he goes out of his way.
Is Dave Roberts an Andrew Friedman clone?
No,
no?
Dave Roberts. No.
You don't think so?
And it's funny. Dave Roberts is interesting because I was thinking about Dave Roberts today.
Okay.
Like Dave Roberts comes off as he may or may not be. There are times where Dave Roberts, I think, has gone by the book and it's bitten him in the playoffs in the World Series.
For sure.
There's times where he's, I think, gone away from the book because the book didn't work and it's bitten him and maybe even ticked off his bosses. So I think
interesting.
So I think, but the one thing that's different about the difference between Dave Roberts and Gabe Kapler, because I was thinking about the personalities. I think it's I'm glad you brought up Dave Roberts. Dave Roberts comes off as 1 freaking million% genuine.
No doubt. People love Dave Roberts.
Dave Roberts is a great human.
Yes. Agreed.
A genuine person. And I'm not saying Gabe Kapler's not a great human. Like, I don't know him on that level. That's not but my point is, nobody thinks that when Dave Roberts is explaining things that he's
no.
Dave, trying to be the smartest guy in the room, or trying to dictate which question is appropriate, which question's not.
You're 100% right. Dave is one of the, but sometimes I do wonder.
He might lie sometimes because he knows something, but he knows.
Oh, of course
he understands. He might have to explain it in an old school way.
Sure.
Even though the decision was based on the new school idea.
Well, sometimes, like Dave Roberts is one of those people who I think it appeals to a broad spectrum of other humans in terms of, hey, like we could go get a beer together.
And my whole...
Gabe's not that. And my forever question, because I know exactly the conversation we're having, and it's like, oh, Mark's defending Gabe. I'm not defending Gabe. There's nothing to defend. You're not attacking Gabe. This is simple for me. Like, he rubs you the wrong way. He doesn't rub me the wrong way. That's fine. I'm curious how the fans feel. Does he rub you the wrong way? And does that affect what you think about his managing? If he does not appeal to a broad spectrum of people in terms of, I'd like to sit next to that guy with a glass of wine, is that necessarily automatically a bad thing? Does it make him phony? Like, just look at Gabe, and you can immediately check the box of, well, most of us aren't going to be like that. Like, how many people even have the capacity to work out and have a physical look like that? It's a tiny percentage of the population. And so there is something inaccessible about him, I find. And it's not that we're intimidated. Like, I don't care what you look like. I'm comfortable in my own skin.
Sure.
But there is something because he acts smart and he acts so clean. And who knows, you may have a girl who gushes over him at home. Whatever it is, there's something that feels very inaccessible about him. And it's the exact opposite of not just Dave Roberts, JD, Bruce Bochy. It's the exact opposite. And I think that's what people struggle with a little bit more than anything baseball substantive.
Well, because I think the baseball substantive is being run by their overarching plan, if that makes sense. Like to me, and I'll use the Dave Roberts example going back to when Kapler was hired, and I was vocal about this. But and look, there are only so many Dave Robertses, but it's like hire a guy like that. Like hire a guy who.
But why has it got to be like a guy like that?
But hire.
Just, again, devil's advocate.
In San Francisco, hire a guy that can explain, like, that the old school, like, has old school credibility, but new school ways.
That's interesting.
Like I don't care if every move you make is an extension of Farhan's iPad, but be able to explain it, be able to run the day to day like a Dusty Baker.
I'll tell you why
Bruce Bochy, like a Dave Roberts.
I find that so interesting because
like a Tito Francona.
If somebody asked me to define Farhan Zaidi is literally going to make every move based on the opposite of what you just said. He does not care what you look like, where you come from, what you sound like. He doesn't care if you look like an everyday player.
It's baseball credibility, though. It's not what you look like specifically. That's not what I'm saying.
I'm saying in an umbrella sense. You and I have talked about this. Farhan does not care what the fans think because Farhan is driven by one thing, and he may or may not be great at it. I think there's still questions, but he's driven by one thing. What is the move in this position that we think, through data, is going to give us the best chance to win baseball games? And if he thinks that that's Gabe, he doesn't care if he's a Martian. He doesn't care if he's a Martian.
I think he thought Gabe Kapler, because of his personal relationships with him in a working environment, I think he thought Gabe Kapler would execute his plan the best. And
doesn't he do that at every position on the field also? Like, think about what we're asking. We want Gabe to look different. We want our right fielder to look different. I'd like that right fielder to hit righties and lefties and hit 35 home runs. Farhan's like, but I can do two people, and we can mix and match and blah, 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 and we can do it for half the money. And I get why that bothers people, and I actually don't even think that's a fair characterization that I just made. It's a generalization, but you know what I mean.
The other
he doesn't care if anybody at every position looks like we want them to look. He doesn't care if it's traditional. Maybe that's the better word to use.
The other thing that bothers me about Kapler is the fact that he knows the narrative surrounding him, and I think he acts a certain way because he knows it. Like, he knows he's
what do you mean by that?
He knows he's up. He knows he's up against it coming into here.
Okay.
So I think he is extra trying to make sure he's the smartest guy in the room.
What do you mean by he knows he's up against it?
He knows that he's not real popular. He knows coming in that he's not real popular.
You think he knew that upon arrival?
Yes, I think he knew that upon arrival, for sure. Whether it was the Dodgers scouting department stuff, whether it was following Bochy.
Well, he knew he was walking into a
the weird personality stuff from Philadelphia that everybody read about. Right. He knew. Like, he knew.
He definitely knew.
He knew.
He knew at that press conference. He knew what he was walking into.
He knew.
Sure.
And look, I think the pandemic helped him. Like, I think the fact that I've said this, and you can say, JD, this is anecdotal, it's serious. I think the pandemic helped them. I think only having a 60-game season that year, as opposed to because they were not going to be very good that year.
Created a soft runway, and they went on a second half run that was interesting.
And it was just like, if he had to manage that team for 162, like, that wouldn't have been a good team. Like, and I know
they probably would have gone 81 and 81.
They might have gone 70 and 90. I think. It was getting better at the end.
Yeah, they were. I mean, a 60-game season, weren't they like 10 under 500?
It was also May. in a real season.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it.
But
it was ramping up. It was better in the second half.
It helped him. Like the fact that it wasn't 160, that helped him. And then, what they did in 2021 is, that was unbelievable. But I think he knew he was up against it coming in. And I'll be honest, what happened the last couple days, that is showing that he isn't secure. He doesn't feel secure.
Okay, I want to back up.
If you're Mr. Calm, Cool, Collected, everything we're doing is going to work out in the end.
Oh no, but he very much was not calm, cool, collected, and when he addressed this last night, he stated that. I remember saying to you in the moment when it happened, I'm like, dude, he cracked. I know he likes to look like he's got everything under control.
Well, I think that's fake. That's my point. I think that the real him. Are you asking him to you know what I mean? Huck something off a wall? You asking him to throw a chair? Not at all.
Because that's how he actually feels. There is stress in that clubhouse right now.
The fake part to me, what he wants to do is be the guy that every single day is like, whoa, why are you asking that? And I think he wants to. I do think that's who he really is. I think that's who he really is.
Okay.
And if he did that, I think he would have been fired already.
So for those of you who didn't hear it, because we've referenced it now a number of times, I want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. Here's the back and forth after the Giants' most recent loss on Wednesday afternoon that led to all of this, courtesy of NBC Sports Bay Area.
Earlier this series, we talked about why you stuck with Wade Meckler in the bases loaded against a lefty. Bases loaded against a lefty tonight, you decided to pinch hit Slater for him. What changed, if anything, in that decision?
I'm absolutely happy to make the distinction, but I'm just curious if you know the distinction.
Is it just Slater versus Ramos?
Yeah, this is not a disrespect to Ramos in any way, but I think Ramos has 4 career pinch hit at bats. Slater's one of the best pinch hitters in baseball. So I don't mind, of course, explaining something, but I just sometimes wonder if the question is, hey, can you say it? Or if that distinction isn't clear. I'm just curious about that.
Slater hasn't been hitting awesome either. He has a more track record, sure, but...
Would you agree that he's one of the 5 best right-handed pinch hitters over the course of the last 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
Do you think there's that creates a distinction between him and a guy that has 4 career pinch hit at bats?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm not criticizing you at all. I'm just wondering if what you're asking is for me to say that, or if whether or not there's a distinction at all for you.
It was a similar situation, so I think people would be interested to learn and hear you explain it.
Yeah, and so, again, Slater's one of the best pinch hitters in baseball, particularly against left-handed pitching over the course of the last 3 seasons. And so in that situation, we trust that he's going to go up there and have a good at-bat. He did, and he grounded into a double play. But I had him go up there because he's really, really good at that. Just has had a stretch where he hasn't had a lot of success.
Let me ask you a question, JD.
That's all people wanted to know. That's all I had to say.
And
Slater's been one of the best pinch hitters.
And last night he admitted that that's absolutely what he should have done. And that is Gabe's version, as weird as it sounds. That's his version of getting upset. Would you have accepted it more if Gabe had just looked at Danny and went, what the hell kind of a question is that? What do you want me to say? You want me to say that this pinch hitter's better than that pinch hitter?
No, that's not good either.
Okay, but would that have been less fake to you?
Probably.
See, but that is him. I don't think Gabe does that, which I don't know why I'm supposed to be mad at that or think that he's phony or what. He's different. That's the way Gabe gets upset. You know what I mean? I have a dad who doesn't yell. He doesn't. That's not how he gets upset. I've watched this with a lot of different people, right? Some people run here. Some people run all the way up here. That's more where I live. My dad lives down here.
I guess what I'm getting at is...
Which one's authentic?
I guess what I'm getting at is I think Gabe wants to do what he did Wednesday a lot and doesn't.
Okay.
And that's where he's being fake. Like if he was being
so you
genuine,
want him to do it more.
Well, if he was being, I think we'd know who he really is if he did it more. And I don't think we'd like it if he did it more. Like that's kind of my point. My point is he hasn't really showed his true colors.